tell you a little bit about the quarterly impact goal. We have these, as the name, every quarter, and the idea is that we share a little bit about the work that we're doing across the different countries. And we try to invite the partners, or the people that we partner with, and people in the communities to speak about specifically about how they see they have benefited from the programs of Accountability Lab, and how we together are advancing towards better accountability and social participation. So sometimes it gets a little bit tricky because we need to connect with people on the ground. 3 months ago, we had it with Nepal, and we had a very interesting conversation about the post-disaster recovery and how information flow is so important. And this time we are working with the team in Liberia. So this is the topic of the call today, but sometimes it's a little bit tricky to connect with people on the ground, and that's why we are still trying to connect with them right now.
But thanks, Daniela. In the meantime, why don't I talk a little bit about what we've been up to? I think there are a few other people joining as we're talking. So welcome to the 6th Impact Call. We are going to talk a little bit about community justice in Liberia. We are going to stick very strictly to time. We want this to be quick and efficient and useful, so we'll finish by 12:30 our time, 5:30 Liberia time. We, a few years ago, talking to various community members and citizens in Liberia, began to think about community justice issues as an accountability concern. There are massive problems of lack of justice in Liberia, lack of access to the formal justice system, huge amounts of corruption and lack of trust at the local level. And we began to work with an organization called the Citizens Bureau to develop a community justice team, who are a group of mediators that mediate disputes at the local level in a part of Monrovia called Logan Town, which is a very populous area of the city that has a lot of disputes as a result of the lack of the legal system. And these range from all sorts of issues, from property rights disputes to domestic disputes to thievery and that kind of thing. And the community justice teams evolved as a way for members of the community to step up and mediate these disputes in a sustainable, effective way at the local level, but also working with the formal justice system where possible to feed cases back down to these mediators that should not have been in the formal justice system in any case. Therefore, saving the state time and money dealing with these cases, and also saving the victims of these issues time and money themselves too. The mediators are diverse. They represent different types of people in the community from all ages, sexes, geographical and linguistic groups, so that everyone feels that there is a mediator that can relate to them and that they can go to if they need help. They are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They've been formally trained in a number of ways by ourselves, by other lawyers, other conflict mediation experts in Liberia and from elsewhere. And the community is aware of what they're up to through significant outreach on their part, with a town crier, which is a traditional way that people in the community learn about what's happening, through radio, through outreach events, and so on. The project has been going now for a couple of years. In the last year, they mediated nearly 70 disputes, which has saved citizens thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of time that they would have otherwise spent navigating the formal justice system, paying for bond fees and legal fees and so on, and bribes. Mr. Kama, hopefully when he joins, he is the leader of the Citizens Bureau and the leader of these mediators, can tell us a bit more about some of those impacts in numbers. And so we were lucky enough earlier this last quarter to have Kelly, who is on the line in Liberia, helping us with a study of the impact of these community justice teams in a slightly more rigorous way than we've been able to do ourselves, and in a slightly more independent and objective fashion. And perhaps we can hear from her a little bit as to how it went. But the idea was to use qualitative research methodologies and a triangulated research design, including focus groups and semi-structured interviews, to begin to get to how impactful these teams have been, and to help us understand the effects that they're having in the community. It included 3 different types of stakeholder groups: the mediators and the team themselves, citizens who had had a dispute mediated by those mediators, and citizens who had not. The idea, of course, to begin to get a bit of a sense of how well this is working and how people have benefited, and obtain a comparative aspect or approach between stakeholder groups, which is something that Kelly has investigated through the literature, and would begin to bring, hopefully for us, a bit more rigor that we. So she conducted three focus groups. We were aiming for 10 to 15 participants in each. We didn't quite get that number, but we got a good amount of people involved, and I think the results were very interesting. We're still working on a final report, and Kelly recorded all of the conversations and is going to use some software to track some of the words that were used to begin to pick out patterns and so on, in some of the things that were said. But I think the results show clearly, firstly, that people who didn't use the community justice teams are unhappy with justice in their community, that they don't trust the formal system, that there is no justice for the poor, that you have to pay to get your case seen and to get any kind of attention from the formal justice system. I think it showed from the beneficiaries, as it were, of the system, that they trust the community mediators much more than they do the state. For example, I'll quote one of them. He said, "The police and the courts are not fair in any way. I say this because I've used the formal justice system, but I prefer the Citizens Bureau, given my experience using both. A woman owed me money at the police station. We were asked to make a promissory note, but at the Citizens Bureau, the woman paid me in less than a week." So clearly there is qualitative information coming through that indicates that this is to some extent working, we hope. The mediators themselves were very adamant about the fact that they were independent, that they were objective, that they don't accept any payment, which of course is a big constraint. For many people in Liberia, this is free. That they take great care to have a written log of all of the cases that are listened to and dealt with, and that they follow up with everyone involved to make sure that these cases are resolved sustainably, and that is the case. The last time I spoke to Mr. Kammer, he said none of the cases that they've mediated have fallen back into conflicts, which is incredible in a place like Logantown. So let me leave it there for now. Kelly, I think, is on the line. Would you add anything to that, Kelly? What were your impressions of how well the community justice team is doing in Logantown?
Sure. So I would add, first of all, that the reason we went with the qualitative methodology in this case is, first and foremost, if done correctly and rigorously, it can be as useful and productive as quantitative analysis. Because we had a small sample size in this particular case, right? We didn't have hundreds of cases that had been mediated by the community justice teams, for example. So that was another reason that utilizing focus groups was helpful. I would say that a couple interesting things I have found so far by literally just listening to the audio files, transcribing them into notes that will later be fed into the qualitative analysis software program that we're using called NVivo. So I just actually got off the phone with the software company, and they'll be giving us a trial to use to analyze this data. So basically what it does is, if you have a large quantity of qualitative data, in this case we have our audio transcripts that we've converted into Word files, you can feed this data into the software program, and it will identify response patterns for you. It becomes more useful the larger the amount of qualitative data you have. It also provides a level of objectivity and credibility when you're analyzing the data. It's possible to do this kind of thing without software and do it utilizing content analysis, where you kind of use multiple people as part of the team to analyze the data in order to ensure objectivity. So myself and my research assistant have so far started to kind of eyeball this. We haven't used the software yet. A few things that I've noticed to build off what Blair said. These community justice mediators, they're very highly regarded in the community. They're seen as very credible. They're seen as reputable. They are respected. People value first and foremost the fact that this service is free. It's their biggest barrier to accessing justice is the cost. They value the fact that these mediators will continually go back and follow up to make sure that the problem is still resolved and nothing else is bubbling up. They value the fact that these community justice mediators make themselves available literally 24/7 to the people. And they value the fact that they're able to resolve disputes in a way that the regular formal justice system hasn't been able to, because basically what they kept saying was, yes, we have these disputes and they're kind of tearing our community and our relationships with each other apart. And what these mediators are able to do is not only help us resolve the dispute, but maintain the bonds and the relationships between people in the community. So it's really giving a function of community building as well, which particularly in this Liberian context, people really value that, that service.
Thank you, Kelly. And just to clarify on that final point, I mean, I think that begins to get some really interesting potential conversations around how you build a society, how you help create trust within communities. Is there any way for us, do you think, to begin to track that over time, or what would you recommend in terms of monitoring the impact for the larger sort of kind of structural changes that are in place?
So it's a little early for me to make recommendations. It'll be part of, I think, the report that we do, and I'd really like to look at the analyzed data. But yeah, I think what you're gonna have to do is as you're going back over time and monitoring and evaluating, you're amassing a larger evidence base, you're going to want to change what you do to see if you can kind of track some of that community building change that's going on. And it'll become easier to do over time and the larger kind of sample that you have available. And I think, analyzing this data will give us some responses and some kind of pattern coding and things to take off from to take a look at that.
Great, Kelly, thank you. And just one more thing. I don't think Mr. Kammer is on the line yet. Are you, Mr. Kammer? No.
I know Anne-Sophie is trying to connect with them directly through the phone, but it seems the connection is not helping us right now.
Okay. Well, that clearly is the technological constraints with Liberia sometimes are significant. Kelly, could you maybe just briefly outline the other constraints that you found trying to do a survey of this type in somewhere like Logantown?
So I think it would have been impossible for me to do anything other in this particular case than these focus groups. I say that because I was also, while I was in Liberia, simultaneously working on another project where I was attempting to collect survey data from civil society organizations, and it was very, very difficult. I managed to get 50 surveys completed over a 5-week span of time with a staff of 5 people. So there's things like this going on, right? When you go in to do surveys with people, first of all, you can't find them or reach them, right? Because there's a lack of technology. You can't figure out where people actually live or where their places of business are located. There's no permanent structures or facilities for them. So there's a lot of technological constraints. There's a lot of infrastructure constraints. In fact, one of the things that kept coming up in the respondents was everyone wants this program to be expanded. The mediators would like to do more meaningful work. They would like to be able to access all the districts in the community. The people who live there, would like to see this program improved and increased, but there's all of these barriers and constraints. For example, one of the biggest things they said was, we have no transportation. So some areas in this community are not walkable. We don't have vehicles. We don't even have motorbikes to be able to get to people. So those are the kinds of constraints they talked about, that of transportation. They talked about moving in a direction where people might be able to use technology to report incidents, so texting them in and having some kind of technological capacity to analyze the data, follow up on the data. You're in an environment where there is no electricity, no access to internet, so all of those things make it very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fact that Mr. Cameron doesn't have transport is what is preventing him from being on the call now, sadly. I hope he's on the way and may make it in time. But why don't we hold it there and see if there are any questions from other people who are listening in.
So I actually have a question. In terms of accountability, and this will be for you and for Kelly as well, feel free to jump in. In your view, what would be the greatest contribution that this project has had to advance accountability in Liberia?
Great question. I think talking to Liberians in communities like Logantown, the way that the word accountability means lots of different things, but the way that it manifests itself often is in a lack of justice, or in a sense that somehow systems are not fair, particularly for poor people and for people that have, for lots of reasons, been excluded in different ways. So this is central to accountability in that it's all about the way that decisions are made, the way that rules are enforced. And that's why I think this is important, and why I was asking about sort of how this is building trust, or how we can measure how this is building trust over time. Because I think if we can begin to help people feel collectively like decisions that are made in their communities, behaviors that are taken are fair, that over time can build trust and build accountability between people that make those decisions and citizens. And that is at the heart of what we think accountability is all about. There are, other aspects of it too, but I think that is sort of central to it. Would you add anything to that, Kelly?
I definitely agree on the aspects of access to increasing equity and fairness, and building trust. I also think that as far as that leading to accountable behavior, in a few responses, something interesting that's coming out was basically something to the effect of, when I had a dispute with this person over this particular issue, one of the things that happened when we went through mediation was the mediators took the time to listen to both sides, but explain to me why perhaps my behavior was viewed as not correct and how I might change my behavior. So a couple of the respondents said, one of them was relative to a gender-based violence incident. And he said, they really took the time to explain to me, here's why it's not okay to treat people this way. Here's a better way to act, and here's why it would be beneficial to you and to the whole community. So in some cases, we're seeing how it leads to more accountable individual behavior that's going to benefit and impact an entire community.
That's really interesting. Absolutely. And the other point too is, of course, because we are helping to support the mediators, the service is free. People that are using the service are not paying bribes. There isn't corruption involved in the same way there is in the formal system. So even at that sort of transactional level, it's beginning to at least avoid certain types of behavior. And again, through some of the reinforcement that the mediators can make about behaviors can begin to build this idea of personal responsibility.
Yeah, that's true as well. It's removing the incentive to act in an unaccountable manner.
So what I'm hearing is that through equity and fairness, we're building accountability, and that's going to have a contribution to a sustainable peace in Liberia, which is very important considering the context of the country.
Absolutely, and you know, if you look at the history of Liberia, I don't think there's another country, perhaps Sierra Leone, but over the course of the last 30 years has had the same experience with war, with misrule, with a disease that created an environment of lack of trust, and so these are really important issues that are at the heart of what needs to happen in terms of creating a better future for Liberia. And what's, I think, fantastic about the community justice teams is it's really bottom up, as we've explained. It's really led by people in these communities who understand the dynamics, who are doing this for the right reasons, and it's small projects, I think, like these, and hopefully Kelly's analysis will show this have impact in ways that is improving lives, perhaps on a relatively small scale now, but we hope to scale them up over time and begin to provide this service in other communities too.
Okay.
And if you, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, I mean, there's a way to, I think, to tie this back to the literature on social accountability that argues that this is a bottom-up approach versus, some of the top-down stuff that's been tried. And there's an argument that says, well, social accountability is going to work. Just provide the mechanisms, and they will come, and it will happen. And what we're finding is that it doesn't work quite that way, because you need to actually, especially in a case like Liberia, right, where conceptions of citizenship are, they're not very deep, right? They've voted now. As far as civic skills, that might be the only one they have. Ideas about citizenship are very new, and they're learning. Teaching them how to actually utilize tools of social accountability is what is going to matter here, and that's what this program is doing. So it's introducing a bottom-up tool, but it's also kind of it's an intervention that's teaching people how to use the tool and how to use these tools to continue that improvement.
Absolutely.
And is there any questions from the audience? Feel free to jump in, and if not, Sarah has a question over here.
Hi, this is Sarah Long with the World Justice Project. I just had two questions. One was, you had mentioned that the mediators are well respected within their communities. I was just kind of curious to learn more about how the mediators were chosen. And then a separate question is, I know that your analysis is still underway, but just from reviewing the interviews you held, do you have any preliminary instincts about any modifications you might make to this project moving forward?
Hi, Sarah. Thanks. Great questions. The mediators were chosen by a small committee led by Mr. Kama in the community. We didn't play too much of a role in that process because we, of course, believe that they know better than we do who is representative, who would be best for this job. Like I said, they are from all different types of groups, speak different languages, ages, sexes, and so on. We did, to some extent, validate those choices by talking in the community to people about what they thought about the mediators, and decided, after doing that they seem to be a good group. They seem to be well respected. So it was unscientific, but I think has worked relatively well. And then in terms of changes going forwards, I'll let maybe Kelly jump in again and based on her preliminary sort of feedback on some of this. But I think one area that needs and making sure that people are aware of this and are coming to them. I think the community increasingly knows about the service, but there's still a lot more to do. We'd love to do some more training, more formal training with the mediators around mediation skills, and keep helping them refresh those. As Kelly mentioned, there is some potential for SMS type approaches to this as well. We could begin to think about how technology can be used to give people more access to improve response and measurement and impact assessment and so on. And then the other piece that I'm thinking about a little bit is, of course, kind of sustainability and revenue. And we are, interestingly, talking a little bit about some kind of potential social impact bond, because this is saving the state a lot of money. And I wonder if there would be a way we could structure something that could offset the costs of this through the amount of money that it would save the government and donors. So that's something we're beginning to think about that I think could be quite creative.
Is there any other question in the audience? Go ahead.
Hi, this is Sarah. I had a question for Blair and Anne-Sophie. Could you guys talk about how the Incubator specifically has supported this project?
Absolutely. Our core work as the Accountability Lab is an incubator for great young people with good ideas like Mr. Kammer. And the incubator provides a whole series of different types of support over 2 years. So the community justice team was part of the incubator for the last 2 years. We're actually going to continue with them for the next 2 years as well, because they're making great progress. And we provide training, in this case, training for the mediators, but also for Mr. Kammer on how to build an organization, on fundraising, on outreach, on systeming, on accountability and integrity issues, and so on and so forth. Ongoing mentorship when he has problems. We really work in different ways to help try and overcome those. Communications and outreach, including things like this call, help with social media, newsletters, blogs, and so on. And seed funding, and so really, trying to get them to the point where this is sustainable, it's effective, and we're getting there quickly with the Citizens Bureau. And in fact, the good work was recognised by Nemati last year, where this work won a prize for justice at the local level in Liberia. So we're making good progress, but we'd love to work with the World Justice Project and others who are interested in these kinds of issues to improve things over time. So I think we're running out of time. It's right on 12:30 now. So any other questions, we're very happy to answer them by email. You can email me at blair@accountabilitylab.org, or Daniela@accountabilitylab.org.
Or by Twitter.
Or by Twitter. The hashtag is ImpactCall. And thank you so much. We're sorry that we didn't get Mr. Kammer on the line, but these are the constraints in Liberia sometimes, and we will work to update you on everything going forwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.